Is Secretary one of the strangest romantic comedies ever made? Or is it actually a love story disguised as something much more confronting? Yeah, Secretary from 2002. Remember first seeing it at Uni Movies. Used to be a weekly double feature in the early 2000s, Wollongong University. And I always had fond memories of it. It was a bit edgy. It was a bit quite different, and yeah, pretty cool. Coming back to it now, I found it even more interesting because of how casually it treats something that most films would present as quite shocking. And yeah, it's really a film about two people who don't fit comfortably into most expectations, and they find someone who understands them. Yeah, it's really one that's quite different. Maggie Gyllenhaal stars in the role as the secretary. At the start of the film, she has just come out of a mental institution, and we learn that she has a history of self-harm. She comes from a family where a father has had a problem with alcohol, and sister is off getting married. She actually gets released from the institution the same day as sister's wedding, and she needs to really restart her life or go in a different direction. She does a secretary course and she aces it. She does really well. She finds a listing for a law firm or a lawyer who needs a secretary, and she turns up for an interview. And she's interviewed by James Spader as Mr. Grey, and she's accepted even without question. Really, it's not even when can you start. It's go and get me a coffee with sugar, and we're off and running. And after a while, the film settles down and really centers on the relationship, very unconventional work relationship between these two characters, mixed in with Maggie Gyllenhaal's character having a conventional relationship with a man played by Jeremy Davies outside of the workplace. And it's really the film showing us a conventional and an unconventional relationship. And her workplace relationship goes to some areas that for most of us, I think we can safely say we haven't had workplace relationships like that, even if we have had workplace romances. And I should know because I met my wife through a workplace relationship. It wasn't quite like this though, I will say that. I do have, like I said, I do have a bit of a history with this film. I remembered Maggie Gyllenhaal immediately. Well, I remembered my reaction to seeing this film. She's just so unconventional. She's unconventional. She doesn't have a classic Hollywood look. She's tall. She's got an interesting face. I think it's a striking face. But I know it's probably not a face for everyone. It's not a mass appeal face. But I quite like it. And I remembered the film feeling daring and a bit and quite sexual and different to anything else around at the time. And it didn't advertise that to me. I thought, okay, the poster's quite interesting with Maggie Gyllenhaal crawling around as the secretary in work attire, but so that signaled that there was something different about it. But the opening scenes quickly let you know that something interesting is happening here. Where she's walking around with a metal bar behind her neck, with her hands attached to it with handcuffs in a submissive position, walking around doing normal secretary tasks. A great intro to the film, actually. So this was my second viewing of the film, and I really appreciated it much more as a character study. It wasn't as outrageous as the first time around, but it does ramp up in the last third, and definitely goes to areas that most films don't go to. A bit more uneven than I recalled, but it's still a really interesting watch. The central relationship, like I said, is between Lee Holloway, which is the Maggie Gyllenhaal character, and Edward Gray, the James Spader character. Now, Maggie Gyllenhaal, this was a breakthrough performance. She was in Donnie Darko with her far more famous brother. Also in Adaptation, the really cool Nick Cage movie, which is worth watching. And then after this, Sherry Baby in 2006, I remember that as being quite a different film too, like a left of center film, which seems to suit her persona. But of course, most people I think would know Maggie Gyllenhaal from being in The Dark Knight, and she gets a lot of criticism for that film. I've just seen recently a lot of comparisons with other actors who've done that role, and I didn't think that her role was significant enough in that movie to warrant any sort of criticism. But hey, I'm probably not the target audience. And she's gone on to do lots of other interesting things since. She's directed some films as well, I'm sure. I think she really, I don't want to say she owns the film, but she nearly does. She's definitely the biggest part of the film. I mean, the film's called Secretary, so that's a signal. But it's a really brave performance. Not just because she bears all near the end of the film. She's asked to deal with some pretty challenging material, and she does it so convincingly that you just accept it. It's so believable. She makes Lee vulnerable as well, with the self-harm aspect. There's a lot of self-harm subject matter in this film, so you need to be aware of that if you're going to watch it. For people in that space, it might be too confronting. But then again, maybe it's worthwhile watching that and talking about it. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you. But even though she makes Lee seem vulnerable, especially in the first, like I said, 2/3 of the film, she never makes her feel weak. And I really wanted her to succeed. Interesting contrast is that Lee begins the film harming herself, and a mother has to get a padlock out and lock up all the knives and sharp implements when she comes home. Like I said, she doesn't have an outlet, but through Edward Gray, the Spader character, she really finds someone who she can relate to and who recognizes something in her and can verbalize what her issues are. And it's such a strange relationship, but emotionally it makes a lot of sense. James Spader as Edward Gray, one of the great, if not the best actors for playing controlled, damaged men, intelligent men. Anyone who's seen Sex, Lies and Videotape, what a performance. Before that, in the early to mid 80s, he was like the good-looking guy. I think there was a film called Tough Turf he was in that was like that. That I've forgotten the name of the film now, but the film that leads up to American Psycho, where he plays a drug dealer with Robert Downey Jr. It's fantastic in that. Wall Street as a stockbroker who gets drawn in by Charlie Sheen. he's used to playing characters that are dodgy, and Crash, another really interesting performance. He's a brave actor too. Obviously, he was in Crash and he was in this and Sex, Lies and Videotape. Again, sexually confronting material that doesn't have many boundaries. He's fine with that. He then went on to be in some long-running TV shows. The Blacklist, of course, most people know him from that, and Boston Legal as well. In all these performances that I've mentioned, he's usually extremely restrained and still, controlled, almost too controlled for his own good, and then things usually get out of control. I did think there was a close connection to this role and Sex, Lies and Videotape, someone whose sexuality is tied to emotional damage and repression. Crash, his character in that, gets to that point as well. But this ultimately is really Lee's story. But still, Edward Gray's character is fascinating, but the film doesn't focus as much on Edward Gray as Lee. She's really the emotional center. I think one of the boldest things about Secretary is, and especially for 2002, is that it doesn't ask, is this behaviour strange? It asks, do these two people understand each other, and can this type of relationship be possible? And for me, anyway, I felt like the film removed the usual judgment. The relationship is okay. Maybe it's unconventional. Maybe we'll call it that. It's definitely messy. You've got the dynamic, the boss employee on top of that. That dynamic's always a bit messy. The relationship's uncomfortable. There's some emotional scarring there from the way that Gray treats Lee. But for the most part, and I think, for just about all of it, it's consensual. Both characters know what they're in for. And it's very emotionally meaningful, and it's very transformative for Lee in particular, but also for Gray. And I think the film is ahead of its time. This stuff was still pushed to the boundaries in 2002. It wasn't loud and proud like it is now, or as loud and proud as it is now. There's a lot of humor and absurdity in this film, and that's really the way that it's filmed and made. It's always theatrical. I never felt like this was a realistic or a documentary type approach. It is theatrical and cinematic, and that's fine. Some of the film's strangest moments for me were the spelling mistakes becoming like a way of communicating between the two characters, and Lee intentionally making mistakes so that she could get punished, so that she could get spanked. Putting the worm in the letter to him and him responding to that. The stains on Lee's shirt after Gray has had to jerk off to reach some sort of sexual conclusion to their relationship before they get together near the end. When he makes her bend over, she's expecting to get spanked, and he goes in a different direction. And then she stands up. He dismisses her, asks her to fill in some forms like nothing's happened. She walks off, and we see that the stains on her shirt. And then she has to go to the bathroom and manage that, and also manage herself. And that's a hilarious scene as well. I love right at the end, the way she drops the dead cockroach on the bed that they've spent some time making perfect, nearly in a military precision way. And she, with a smile on her face, she drops the dead cockroach onto the cover, knowing that will spark a punishment situation when he gets home. Fantastic. The film really understands that these situations are inherently ridiculous. and it doesn't play everything with deadly seriousness. It makes light of the characters, and the characters kind of Lee anyway makes light of this herself. I think the humor in the film keeps Secretary from becoming a pretentious film, which I think it could have easily done. The power dynamic is critical to this film. I mean, when we're talking about submission and power in relationships, the power dynamic obviously is front and center. Interesting reversal in this one. Initially, Edward has the power. He's the boss. He makes the rules. All of this activity happens in the workplace. He has economic control over Lee. He controls the environment. It's his office. It's his name on the plate as he keeps on admonishing her when she makes a mistake. You know, you're representing me. The way you present to the clients reflects on me. But eventually, Lee comes to understand him better than he understands himself, and that is a shock and a revelation to Edward. She learns his patterns, and she challenges him. And at first, he doesn't like that, but eventually, he really gets into it. And I felt like the person who appears submissive is actually the one who forces emotional change in this film. A few things didn't work for me, though. I said at the top, it's a little bit uneven in tone, and it does take quite a while to get where it's going. I looked down, and it was 40 minutes, and we still hadn't hit the crux of the film yet. That's going to be a struggle for contemporary viewers. It was a struggle, probably was a struggle back then, to be honest, with a film like this, that is not a large film. It's not a major film. I think it could have got to where it's going a little quicker. And conversely, at the other end, I think it was probably 15 or 20 minutes too long as well. The final act does drag a little bit with Lee proving her love, really, to Edward, sitting there at the desk. Maybe we chop a little bit there. We could definitely probably trim a little bit from that first 40 minutes that I mentioned, and we've got a much tighter package. I felt like the hunger strike sequence that I just mentioned does make the point a bit too strongly. I feel like Lee's devotion has already been well established. It's apparent. But the film continues after the emotional conclusion has already arrived as well. It was only, for me, it was good that the film ended with the cockroach on the bed. That was a good way to wrap it up, because it was sort of veering a bit off course, I felt. Maybe a tighter, not ending, but tighter last 15 minutes would have been a little bit more effective. I'll return to the opening question I posed, though. Is this a romantic comedy? I think in an unconventional way it is. It's got the traditional structure of two outsiders meeting. They challenge each other, but they change each other. They find acceptance as well. Instead of the misunderstandings and the missed opportunities and the sliding doors moments and social differences, or whatever you want to call it, I think the obstacle here in this one is, can two people accept the parts of themselves they've always hidden? And eventually they can. And it's played out quite well in the scene where they're together in Edward's apartment, and everything is stripped bare, literally. So, is it a date film? Well, it could be. It's dealing with questions about relationships, and it's pretty sexy. It definitely gets the blood flowing. It could be. It could make you get to the point a bit quicker with some questions about what you're into. But yeah, choose wisely. Choose your partner wisely before putting this on, I would say. It's got everything, and you do need to be aware of the self-harm. The self-harm subplot is often something that we're not aware of with other folks. So it would be a bit of a risk, and you do have to be aware of that. Again, I'll say it, that that's confronting. It's a confronting topic, and if you struggle with this issue, you probably need to know about that when you go into this film. A hangover film, possibly. It's sort of quite. It doesn't. I guess stick together like a normal film does, where it requires concentration throughout. It's really sort of a. Yeah, I'm not explaining it very well, but it is something that you can flow in and out of, and the scenes themselves are quite entertaining. There's a lot to look at for both genders. Yeah, maybe it is a hangover film. I enjoyed it as a watch alone as well, because like I said, I really zeroed in on the unconventional nature of the relationship and what the characters discovered about themselves. So it's probably a 2 out of 3. The date film part really needs you need to be careful. Secretary is not the film I remembered. It's not as slick and smooth as I recall. It's probably less entertaining as well. A bit more uneven, like I said, but I respect it more for its bravery. It's maybe a film that shouldn't have worked at all, because it takes a subject that could easily have become exploitative, maybe, and instead turns it into something strangely tender and quite well handled, I think. So I think Secretary isn't really about unconventional behavior. I think it's about two people discovering that the thing that they thought made them impossible to love might even be the thing that allows someone else to understand them. So maybe it's about owning the original part of yourself, living your life as who you are, accepting yourself. Maybe that's what I really got out of it. Be yourself, and own that. So look, I do think it's worth a watch, especially if you're into left of center films. I do think it's more fascinating than it is flawless. So yeah, that's Secretary from 2002. I hope you check it out if you're interested. It's on Amazon Prime at the moment. So yeah, thanks for listening as always. See you next time.